No one on Flight 384 knew the woman who just bought the airline was watching. Not the crew, not the passengers, and definitely not the flight attendant who slapped the 13-year-old girl in seat 2A. The slap echoed louder than any boarding announcement, louder than the babies crying back in coach, louder than the silence that followed. Ava Bradford didn't cry. She didn't scream. She didn't even flinch. She just stood there, frozen, her cheek stinging, her hand still clutching the boarding pass she had politely offered. Her sister, Lila, stood behind her, backpack half off one shoulder, eyes wide, breath caught in her throat. Across the aisle, a businessman lowered his phone. A woman stopped mid-sip of champagne. The whole first-class cabin went still. "Where did you steal this ticket from?" the flight attendant snapped, snatching the boarding pass from Ava's hand. "Did someone let you through as a joke?" "There are seats," Ava said quietly, trying to hold her voice steady. 2A and 2B. My mom booked them. The attendant, Janelle, according to her badge, snorted. "Your mom booked first class for 2 kids?" she said, her voice dripping with doubt. "Sure she did. We're flying to Boston," Lila chimed in, her voice trembling. She booked them directly with Skyways. Janelle looked them up and down. Hoodies, worn sneakers, no parents in sight, and smiled without warmth. "Girls like you don't belong up here," she said. "This section's for real passengers." Let that sink in. 2 polite, clean, well-behaved girls, slapped and humiliated in first class because they didn't look rich enough. Have you ever seen someone get treated like garbage just because of how they looked? Comment 1 if this makes you angry, or 2 if something like this has ever happened to you or someone you love. And don't forget to subscribe if you believe in standing up for people who can't always stand up for themselves. Ava blinked hard and reached into her hoodie pocket. She pulled out her ID, a laminated middle school student card from Palo Alto Honors Academy. Neat name. Straight A face. School logo and all. Janelle didn't even look at it. "Out!" she barked. "Now!" "But we—" Ava started. Janelle leaned in close, her voice now a sharp whisper only they could hear. "If you don't leave these seats right now, I'll have airport security drag you off this plane in front of everyone. Your choice." The man across the aisle shifted uncomfortably but said nothing. The woman behind them started recording, her phone angled low. Ava didn't move. She turned to Lila. "Let's just go," she whispered. "Where?" Lila asked. "We didn't do anything wrong." A gate supervisor in a blazer appeared and shoved 2 new tickets into Ava's hand. 32F and 32G, he said without even looking at them. "Back of the plane, right side. Let's go." They walked down the aisle past rows of polished shoes and champagne flutes, past faces that looked away, then looked back quickly when they thought no one was watching. They passed the curtain that separated first from everyone else, and they kept walking. Row 32 smelled like disinfectant and overworked air vents. Their seats were next to the restroom. One cushion had a tear. Ava sat first, then Lila. For a moment they said nothing. Then, softly, Lila asked, Did she just hit you?" Ava nodded slowly. "Yeah, I should have said something." "You did," Ava replied. "You stood with me." They sat in silence as the rest of the plane boarded. Janelle's voice buzzed through the intercom, chipper now, as if nothing had happened. But somewhere in the terminal, walking through security at that very moment, was a woman in a gray coat and sunglasses. She wasn't carrying designer bags. She wasn't flanked by assistants. She wasn't even flying first class. But she had just signed the final papers to reacquire Skyways Airlines for $4.8 billion, reversing a deal she'd canceled earlier that same morning. She was about to walk past Gate 32, and when she did, she would see her daughters, seated in shame, bruised in silence, all because one woman thought they didn't belong. And that would be the last moment Janelle Foster would ever serve on a plane again. Ava Bradford had always preferred books to people. Even now, seated in 32F next to a humming airplane bathroom and the scent of instant coffee, She reached into her bag with shaking hands and pulled out her favorite novel, To Kill a Mockingbird. The corners were bent, the cover cracked, and the pages smelled like old wood and sunlight. It comforted her. It reminded her of her mom. Lila didn't say much. She sat next to Ava, staring at her scratched window with her chin tucked into the collar of her oversized hoodie. Her knees were pulled up tight, backpack squished between her legs like a security blanket. Neither of them cried. They had cried in 3rd grade, maybe 4th, but not anymore. Being mistaken for poor, unwanted, or lost wasn't new to them, too. It just wasn't supposed to happen on this trip. This flight to Boston was special, a test of sorts. Their mom, Vivian, had been hesitant about letting them travel alone, even with all the arrangements she'd made. The car service, the direct flight, the first-class seats, the pre-approved unaccompanied minor forms, the TSA Fast Pass, the emergency contact numbers. Still, she'd asked them the night before, just before bed, "You two sure you're ready to fly alone?" Ava had nodded first. "We're not babies," Lila added. "We're not afraid either." Vivian had smiled and brushed Lila's curls off her face. "All right then," she said. "But promise me you'll call if anything feels wrong." That promise now sat between them, heavy as luggage, because everything did feel wrong. But they hadn't called. Not yet. Ava reached into the front pocket of her bag and pulled out the envelope her mom had given her. It was labeled in black marker, "Emergency. Do not open unless you really need to." Inside was a prepaid phone, a laminated card with codes and numbers, and a folded letter that Ava hadn't read yet. She didn't open it now either. Instead, she whispered, "Not yet." Lila turned to her. "What?" "Nothing," Ava said. "Just thinking." Lila nodded, then said softly, "I hate how she looked at us." Ava didn't have to ask who she was. Janelle, the flight attendant, the woman who slapped her, the woman who accused them of stealing their tickets, the woman who sent them back here near the restroom, like they were less than the other passengers. "Like we were, I don't know," Lila continued, "some kind of street kids." Ava glanced down at their clothes, matching hoodies, hers navy, Lila's gray. No logos, no designer shoes, backpacks worn from school and camp. No monogrammed luggage, no makeup, no rich kid vibes, as Lila once called it. They looked normal, and that, apparently, was the problem. Their mom, Vivian, had always insisted they live that way. "You don't learn anything if everything is handed to you with a gold spoon," she'd say. Vivian Bradford was a billionaire, not by inheritance, but by invention. She had built her first company from her college dorm, sold it by 30, built another, then another. Her name was whispered in Forbes circles and VC boardrooms, but at home, she was just mom. She made lunch. She drove carpool. She didn't believe in private chefs or nannies or even first-name-only housekeepers. What she did believe in was integrity, hard work, and being able to see people for who they were, not how they dressed or how much they had. And so, Ava and Lila had been raised plain, intentionally. Not because their mom didn't love them, but because she did. Vivian never flaunted her wealth. She refused to use her power as armor. She didn't want her daughters growing up afraid of being told no, or unable to handle life's pushbacks. But now, Ava wondered if maybe they'd been wrong to stay silent. Maybe they should have called. Maybe her mom would have wanted to know. A soft chime rang overhead. "Final boarding call for Flight 384 to Boston," the intercom buzzed. Lila let out a breath. "Wish we were already there?" Ava didn't respond. She was thinking about something her mom had said just before they left that morning, when she kissed their foreheads outside the car. "What matters most, girls, is not how the world sees you, but how you see yourselves." But what if the world didn't just see you wrong? What if it hit you for it? From somewhere up front, Janelle's voice returned on the speaker. "Welcome aboard Flight 384. Flight time to Boston will be 5 hours and 20 minutes. We'll be pushing back shortly. Lila shifted in her seat. Do you think she told anyone she hit you? No, Ava said flatly. She doesn't think she did anything wrong. Will anyone believe us? Ava looked toward the front of the plane, past the heads, past the curtain, toward the place they were supposed to be sitting. She swallowed hard. I don't know. Somewhere else in the terminal, just beyond gate 32, a woman in a gray coat was walking faster now. Her phone had buzzed minutes earlier. 2 new messages, both short. One from Ava, one from Lila. And now she wasn't smiling anymore. Vivian Bradford was heading for the plane, and whether her daughters called her or not, she was about to change everything. They were 2 rows away from their new seats in the very back of the plane when it happened again. The sting on Ava's cheek had faded into a dull throb, but the ache in her chest was growing sharper by the second. Row 32 was already half occupied. 2 passengers stood in the aisle rearranging their luggage in the overhead bins. The air was thick with the mixed scent of cleaning chemicals and recycled breath. As they waited, clutching their new boarding passes, Janelle appeared again, this time at the front of the cabin, loud and theatrical. Ladies and gentlemen, she announced with a customer service smile that didn't reach her eyes. We've had some seating confusion today. Just a quick reminder, first class is for ticketed passengers only. We appreciate your understanding. Ava stopped mid-step. She knew exactly who that announcement was for. Lila's fingers tightened around hers. Passengers looked up from their phones. A few turned to glance toward the rear of the plane, as if scanning for the so-called confusion. Someone near row 20 muttered, "Seriously?" under their breath. Janelle's voice came again, sweet like poison. We do our best to accommodate all travelers, but rules exist for a reason. Everyone should sit where they belong. Ava's face flushed. Lila looked like she might cry, but blinked it back. Neither spoke. They slid into 32F and 32G without another word. That should have been the end of it. But Janelle wasn't done. Minutes later, as passengers settled in and the final boarding group trickled down the aisle, she approached their row with a clipboard and forced cheer. Well, I'm just here to confirm that you 2 are Ava and Lila Bradford, correct? Ava nodded cautiously. And you understand you've been reassigned to these seats due to irregularities with your original boarding location? Lila frowned. Irregularities? Janelle's smile thinned. You attempted to sit in first class without proper authorization. That's not true, Ava said, her voice calm but firm. We had valid tickets. You took them from us. Sweetheart, Janelle cut her off, bending closer so only the nearby passengers could hear. This conversation is not optional. If you'd prefer, I can have security explain the situation more clearly. Lila's breath caught. Ava stayed still. I'm fine right here, Ava replied softly. Thank you. Lovely, Janelle said. Then let's not have any more confusion about where you belong. She straightened, adjusted her blouse, and walked off, satisfied. A few rows ahead, a gray-haired woman with a crossword puzzle lowered her pencil and watched Janelle walk away. She looked back at the girls, then quickly looked down. A young man in cargo pants and a Patagonia hoodie across the aisle shook his head slightly. He'd heard everything. He did nothing. The thing about public humiliation is that it spreads. It doesn't have to be shouted. It seeps, quietly, like poison gas, through body language, lowered voices, glances that linger too long. The man seated next to Ava kept shifting in his seat like she was contagious. The toddler 2 rows behind them pointed and said too loudly, "Mommy, why did the mean lady yell at those girls?" The mother shushed him. Ava wanted to disappear. Lila curled up in her seat, arms crossed over her chest. It wasn't the slap anymore. That had been shocking, sure, but this was slower, colder, more exhausting. This was what it felt like to be dismantled without anyone touching you. 20 feet forward, behind the drawn first-class curtain, Janelle sipped water from a plastic cup. The first-class couple, now sitting in 2A and 2B, were comfortably reclined, wearing noise-canceling headphones and enjoying hot towels. They hadn't asked what happened to the kids who were there before, and she hadn't offered. Supervisor Grant had backed her up without question. 2 unaccompanied minors? With first-class seats? The chances of that being real were slim, he'd said. Looked like a stunt. Probably trying to sneak in and score better seats, he'd mumbled before signing the reassignments. Frankly, they're lucky we let them on at all. Janelle agreed. She'd seen enough in her 20 years of flying to know when someone didn't belong. Torn backpacks, scuffed shoes, hoodie strings chewed at the ends. Girls like that didn't book $1,200 seats. They weren't priority members. They didn't even carry iPads. It wasn't about race. It wasn't about class. It was about fitting the cabin. Or so she told herself. Back in row 32, Ava stared at the tray table in front of her. Her fingers hovered over her mom's emergency envelope. Still unopened. Next to her, Lila whispered, "Are we gonna be okay?" Ava nodded, but it was hollow. Because she didn't know. What she did know was that people like Janelle didn't slap by accident. They didn't announce seating clarifications for no reason. They didn't call attention to passengers they weren't trying to embarrass. And worst of all, they usually got away with it. But not today. From across the airport, through TSA security and the crowds of travelers, Vivian Bradford was walking. Fast. She wasn't taking calls. She wasn't checking her watch. She was heading straight for Gate 32. And behind her, a legal team was already scrambling to reverse a $4.8 billion decision she'd made just 5 hours earlier. The decision not to buy Skyways Airlines. That deal was about to change. Because when Vivian saw her daughter's face, it wouldn't matter what the deal cost. It wouldn't matter who stood in her way. All that would matter was justice. Vivian Bradford stood at Gate 32 and knew, without a doubt, that something was wrong. She spotted her daughters instantly, curled up in the very last row of the plane, just barely visible through the glass wall. She didn't need to see their faces to know they weren't okay. She could read their posture like pages. But when Ava turned her head for just a moment, Vivian caught the angle of the light, the red mark on her cheek. Her pace slowed. She didn't call out, didn't rush. She simply inhaled. Once, deep. Then she pulled out her phone. "Julia," she said calmly into the receiver, "I need legal to reverse the status on Skyways. Immediately." "Ma'am?" her assistant stammered. "But it's active again. We're going through with acquisition, full buyout. Pull the deal terms I rejected this morning. Add a clause for expedited control transfer. I want every department reporting to me in less than 6 hours." There was silence on the line. Then Julia's voice returned, quiet but sharp. "Understood." Vivian kept walking. Gate 32 was now swarming with staff preparing for final departure. She didn't speak to them. She didn't need to. Power, when held correctly, announces itself without words. She stopped beside the counter and looked at the monitor. A young man in a blue vest with Skyways staff written across his chest stepped toward her. "Can I help you, ma'am?" She smiled politely. "Yes. You can tell me why 2 unaccompanied minors with first-class tickets are seated in row 32. The staffer blinked. I'd have to check. I already did," Vivian replied. "And they weren't bumped for weight balance, or safety, or emergency protocol. They were downgraded at check-in after their documents were verified, then reassigned again at the gate, and I have yet to hear a single legal reason why." He fumbled for his tablet. "Let me get my supervisor." "That won't be necessary." Vivian leaned in slightly. "I'm Vivian Bradford." The staffer paused, then paled. "The Vivian Bradford? The one who just bought 92% controlling interest in this airline?" "Yes, that one." He swallowed hard. "I'll get the captain." Inside the aircraft, first class was sipping champagne when the call came through. "Cabin crew, stand by. Gate supervisor requests hold. New boarding instructions pending. Janelle frowned and stepped into the galley. Now what? She muttered. The phone rang on the wall. She picked it up. Yes, wait, who? No, I don't have any children on the manifest in first class. They were reassigned. Why? Silence. Then her face changed. Not dramatically. Not a scream or gasp. Just stillness. A tightening around the jaw. A slight flutter in her left eye. She replaced the phone. Slowly. Then turned and looked down the aisle. Past business class. Past economy. Toward row 32. And she saw her. Vivian Bradford. Standing at the door. Speaking to the captain. Calmly. Firmly. And then she walked on board. She didn't ask for permission. She didn't wait for a welcome. Vivian moved with the quiet poise of a woman who had negotiated with prime ministers and shut down Wall Street floors with one signature. When she reached row 32, Ava looked up. Lila blinked twice. Both sat straighter. "Mama?" Lila asked, voice small. Vivian knelt down slowly in the cramped space. She touched Ava's cheek with 2 fingers. Just barely. Still warm. Then she looked her daughter in the eyes. "You okay?" Ava nodded. We didn't want to bother you. You said only in an emergency." Vivian smiled, but there was fire behind it. "This is an emergency." She stood, turned, and faced the entire cabin. "Captain," she said to the man now walking down the aisle toward her, "we need to delay this departure, immediately. I'm sorry, but I've just executed a $4.8 billion reacquisition of Skyways Airlines," she said evenly. "As of 12 minutes ago, the board ratified my controlling stake. I'm now the acting chairwoman of the Executive Oversight Board and effective CEO. Delay the flight." Passengers began to murmur. "Ma'am," the captain tried. Vivian raised a single eyebrow. He picked up the phone. "This is Flight 384, holding at gate due to executive directive. Stand by for further instructions." Janelle appeared at the front of the cabin. Her usual brisk confidence had evaporated. Vivian walked forward to meet her. "You struck my daughter," she said plainly. Janelle opened her mouth, closed it, tried again. "I didn't," Vivian cut her off. "Don't lie. The passengers saw. The camera caught it, and my daughter's face still holds your handprint. They weren't supposed to be in first. They had valid first-class tickets, purchased directly through private account channels. Their names were in the manifest. They were flagged for VIP protocol. And yet you downgraded them, humiliated them, threatened them. I didn't mean... You meant to show them they didn't belong." The cabin had fallen completely silent. Vivian stepped slightly closer, her voice still calm. "You were wrong. Have you ever had someone tell you, without words, that you didn't belong somewhere? Comment 1 if you've lived that moment. Comment 2 if you believe some people need to learn the hard way who they're messing with." Vivian turned back toward the aisle. "Captain, please have this flight deboarded. I'll be grounding Flight 384 and requesting a new crew. My daughters and I will not fly with this woman on board." Janelle's knees buckled slightly. "No, you can't just..." "I can," Vivian said. "And I just did." The words, "delayed," "executive hold," flashed across every Skyway screen in Terminal C. Passengers grumbled. Phones came out. A man in a navy blazer at Gate 35 cursed under his breath and muttered something about missing a meeting in Boston. Murmurs turned into questions, questions into noise. But at Gate 32, where Flight 384 sat motionless on the tarmac, no one said a word. Because Vivian Bradford had stepped onto the jet bridge, and behind her came 2 men in suits, one with a leather case, the other holding an iPad logged into a secure executive system. They wore no name tags, but their posture screamed authority. Vivian didn't speak until they were all on the plane. Then she turned toward the front, calm and clear. "I need the full flight crew assembled, here, now." Janelle hesitated in the galley, still clutching a service tray like it could protect her. Captain Hawthorne emerged from the cockpit, face tight. 2 junior flight attendants followed, shifting awkwardly in their loafers. "Captain," Vivian said. "Names?" He straightened. Captain Dennis Hawthorne, ma'am. First Officer Reed Monroe. Lead Flight Attendant Janelle Foster. Cabin crew Elise, Ryan." Vivian's legal counsel nodded, taking silent notes. "Good," she said. "Now here's what's going to happen." The entire cabin leaned in, though no one dared to move. Vivian didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. Her tone was enough. "This flight has been grounded. Permanently. Flight 384 will not depart today, and neither will this crew." Janelle blurted, "This is highly irregular." Vivian raised a hand. "Irregular," she repeated, "is when a crew member physically assaults a minor in first class, then proceeds to humiliate her and her sister across multiple touch points of the customer journey. Check-in, security, boarding, in-flight." "I didn't," Janelle began. Vivian turned to her assistant. "Play the clip." He tapped his iPad. A low-quality phone video began playing. It showed Ava standing quietly in 2A, holding out her ticket. Then, the slap. Clear, audible. Gasps spread through the cabin. "Where did you get that?" Janelle asked, her voice now thin. "From a concerned passenger who sent it directly to our whistleblower hotline," Vivian said. "Anonymous, but brave." Have you ever seen someone hurt a child and pretend like it never happened? Comment 1. If you think the truth always comes out. Comment 2. If you believe silence is never the answer when injustice is happening right in front of you. The junior flight attendants looked at one another, visibly rattled. Vivian continued, her voice steady. "I have since pulled the seating logs, transaction history, and supervisor override notes. The girls' seats were manually reassigned. By you, Janelle. Despite their tickets being purchased through a secured executive account and flagged for VIP handling." "It wasn't just me," Janelle muttered. "Supervisor Grant approved the change." Vivian raised an eyebrow. "Grant's already on indefinite suspension pending investigation, and just so you're clear, following a superior's unethical order is not a defense, especially when it involves children." The legal aide handed her a tablet. Vivian scanned it, nodded once, then turned to Captain Hawthorne. "As of this moment, your entire crew is relieved of duty pending formal review. You are not to operate any further flights until cleared by both internal audit and third-party compliance review." Captain Hawthorne looked stunned. "But I didn't even know it." "And that," Vivian said evenly, "is exactly the problem. You had 2 minors on your flight manifest, both of whom were VIP passengers, and you didn't know where they were seated?" He said nothing. "Dismissed," Vivian said simply. As the crew exited the aircraft one by one, heads down, the passengers remained seated in stunned silence. Vivian turned to the cabin. "To those of you who witnessed today's events," she said, "thank you for your patience. I realize this is inconvenient, but injustice always is." She motioned to her assistant, who stepped forward with a printed stack. "Inside these envelopes are refunds, rebooking options, and a direct apology from Skyways. I'm not here to excuse what happened. I'm here to own it." One woman in row 5, who had been filming quietly the whole time, whispered, "That's how it's done." A man across the aisle muttered, "About time someone cleaned house." Vivian turned to Ava and Lila, who had been quietly watching from the rear of the plane. She smiled, not the press smile, not the corporate smile, the mother smile. "You ready to go home?" she asked gently. Lila nodded. Ava stood slowly, still holding the unopened envelope marked emergency. They walked to the front of the plane together. Vivian put one arm around each of them. As they stepped back onto the jet bridge, the silence in first class was still absolute. At the gate, reporters had begun to gather. Somehow, word had already spread. Something about a billionaire grounding her own airline's flight over a slapping incident. Vivian didn't stop for the cameras. She walked straight toward the private exit. But one reporter, a young black woman from a local station, managed to ask, "Ms. Bradford, What message do you hope this sends? Vivian paused just long enough to answer. That no one, not even a flight attendant with a name tag and a microphone, gets to tell my daughters they don't belong. By 8:43 p.m. that evening, Skyway's executive boardroom in Manhattan was no longer a conference room. It was a war room. 17 men and women, SVPs, division heads, legal counsel, PR directors, sat around a long oak table, lit only by the cool glow of their tablets and the overhead halo of the LED lights. At the head of the table stood Vivian Bradford, not seated, not resting. Standing, like someone who didn't come to ask for input, but to deliver a verdict. Behind her, a massive screen displayed a still frame frozen in time. Janelle Foster, palm midair, about to strike. Gasps had already faded. No one was gasping anymore. Now, they were calculating, wondering if they still had a job. Vivian didn't rush. She waited until every single pair of eyes was on her. Then she spoke. Let me begin with what I'm not going to do. She looked around the table. I'm not going to quietly fire a flight attendant and move on like this never happened. I'm not going to slap a DEI statement on our homepage and hope the story dies by Monday. And I'm certainly not going to protect a broken system just because it's familiar. Her voice was calm, even. But what I am going to do is burn down the rot and rebuild from clean steel. The screen behind her changed. Slide 1, customer complaints, racial discrimination, last 24 months. Bar chart, Skyways at the top, by a lot. Slide 2, internal investigations, resolved without action, 82%, industry average, 46%. Slide 3, employee turnover among minority flight staff up 41% over 3 years. And then, Slide 4, a new image. Janelle, red circle around her ID badge. Captioned, her face was the slap, but it was your silence that made it possible. Have you ever worked in a place where people looked the other way while injustice happened? Comment 1, if you've been there. Comment 2, if you walked out to protect your dignity. SVP of Legal, a man in a sharp navy suit, raised a cautious hand. Vivian, he said, there are legal considerations here. Publicly identifying this woman, especially with that phrasing, opens us to defamation risk. Vivian turned to him. You think this is about her? He opened his mouth, closed it. Vivian stepped forward. Let me explain this again, slowly. This isn't about one flight attendant. This is about who we hired, who we promoted, who we protected. This is about a culture that sees a child sitting in first class and assumes it's fraud. She paused. And now it's personal, because it was my daughter this time, but next time it might be yours. No one breathed. The head of operations tried a new angle. Vivian, respectfully, grounding flights, delaying takeoffs, firing entire crews. It's a PR nightmare. The stock took a 6-point dip just this afternoon. Vivian nodded. Yes. And tomorrow morning, the same stock will rise 10 points when investors realize we're the first airline in 20 years to actually do something about systemic bias. She tapped her remote. New slide. New leadership directive. Effective immediately full audit of passenger complaints. 5 years. Third-party reviewed mandatory anti-bias training. Real, not check-the-box, transparent reporting pipeline. For employees and passengers. Link executive bonuses to non-discrimination metrics. Permanent internal task force led by survivors of airline discrimination. The last item, 6. Public apology to Ava and Lila Bradford. Published front page, full page ad. Someone at the end of the table whispered, "She's serious." Vivian looked at him. I'm not just serious. I'm done playing CEO games. I don't need to be liked. I need this place to stop hurting people. And then she said it, the line that would end up printed across newspapers the next day. We're not fixing PR. We're fixing the airline. By 9:12 p.m., half the room was on their second espresso. Vivian was still standing. Legal was drafting the apology letter. HR was scheduling town halls. The head of digital was already rewriting the employee conduct policy. But someone, somewhere, still thought they had a shot at pushing back. "We've never had a CEO operate this emotionally," said someone from investor relations. "Feels unstable." Vivian smiled. "If you think accountability is instability," she said, "you're the reason the plane is falling." Her final slide loaded on screen. It showed a quote from a Skyways brochure in 2004. "Flying is about trust." Vivian looked at it for a moment, then back at the room. "Let's earn it." Then she picked up her coat. "I'll be in Denver in 6 hours. First staff town hall begins at 7 a.m. sharp. Anyone who shows up late, don't bother coming in at all." She walked out without waiting for applause. There was none. Just silence. The kind of silence that follows the truth. By sunrise, Denver International Airport's main atrium was unrecognizable. Where there were usually flight delay notices and sleepy travelers sipping burnt coffee, there were now cameras, lights, and every major news outlet from coast to coast. CNN, MSNBC, CBS, even international outlets like BBC and Al Jazeera had sent crews. The reason? Vivian Bradford was about to speak. Not as a billionaire, not as a CEO, but as a mother who'd had enough. She stood at the podium flanked by her daughters, Ava and Lila, both now dressed in matching navy cardigans with crisp collars. Behind them was a massive banner bearing the new Skyways slogan, "Dignity without exception." She didn't begin with a legal disclaimer or a brand-safe apology. She began with a sentence that stopped every mic in its place. "A flight attendant slapped my child in first class because she didn't look like she belonged there." You could hear the room exhale. "What followed was not a mistake," she continued. "It was a system. A system that didn't question why 2 well-behaved girls were removed from their paid seats. A system that didn't pause when they were harassed, humiliated, downgraded, and dismissed." Vivian's tone didn't rise. It didn't need to. It was surgical. And because no one paused, I did. I paused the plane. I paused the stock. I paused the silence. Have you ever stayed silent when you knew something was wrong, just to avoid rocking the boat? Comment 1 if you regret that moment. Comment 2 if today's the day you choose differently. Vivian continued. "I've spent 20 years in boardrooms watching people get rewarded for protecting profit over principle. I've seen bad behavior explained away as a training issue or a one-time mistake. But today, I'm calling it what it really is. Cowardice wearing a name badge." She looked straight into the cameras. "To every passenger who's been looked at like they didn't belong, this change is for you. To every employee who spoke up and got pushed out, this change is for you too." She took a breath, then outlined what no airline executive had ever dared to say on live national TV. The Bradford Initiative for Airline Equity, as read on air, now trending worldwide. Public Accountability Wall, monthly publication of verified discrimination complaints and outcomes. Boardroom Access Pass, quarterly Q&A between passengers and Skyways board, live-streamed. Industry-wide coalition proposal, inviting every major U.S. airline to adopt the same reforms or publicly explain why not. Flight Crew Equity Index, transparent internal scoring tied to compensation, performance reviews, and promotion eligibility. Passenger Protection Hotline, 24/7 hotline for reporting discrimination, managed by a neutral third party. The reaction was instant. Social media lit up with the hashtag #SkywaysShift. Passengers from other airlines began sharing their own stories. A former American Airlines flight attendant posted, "If we'd had this system in 2017, I wouldn't have had to quit." Within 2 hours, Delta issued a statement saying they were evaluating similar initiatives. JetBlue said they'd take a leadership role in the new coalition. But United Airlines? Radio silence. That silence didn't last long. That afternoon, a video surfaced from a United gate in Charlotte. A black family being told their stroller was too large for boarding. even though the white family ahead of them had brought a double wide. The video hit 2.4 million views in 6 hours. By nightfall, a third of all airline-related conversations on Twitter mentioned Skyways by name, not as a villain, but as a standard. Meanwhile, inside Skyways, the ripple effects were just beginning. Vivian had instructed HR to start a voluntary confession program for staff who had witnessed or enabled past misconduct but were never empowered to report it. By noon, over 60 messages had come in. One from a baggage handler who watched a supervisor call 2 Sikh men terrorists behind their backs. Another from a former gate agent who'd been told to downgrade rowdy-looking teens to economy, no matter their ticket class. Vivian didn't punish all of them. She didn't need to. Some people didn't need to be fired. They needed to be taught. And others, they were already packing. Ava and Lila watched the news coverage from a quiet lounge that evening. They sat on either side of their mom, who was sipping mint tea and skimming briefing notes. The girls didn't say much, but they didn't need to, because for the first time all week, they weren't looking down. They were looking up. Lila broke the silence first. "Did you mean it?" Vivian looked at her. "Mean what? That it wasn't just about us?" Vivian smiled. "Of course. It never was." She placed a hand on Ava's shoulder. "Because the moment someone tells a child, you don't belong, that's not a customer service issue. That's a fight for the future." 3 days after the press conference, the ripple became a wave. What started as a reckoning for one airline had turned into something bigger, much bigger. Vivian Bradford had called out systemic bias in air travel. But now, other industries were being pulled into the light, ready or not. A young black engineer from Atlanta posted her story under the trending hashtag, "Dignity Without Exception." She'd applied for a home loan at First Haven Bank, had a 740 credit score, no debt, 2 years of savings. She was denied. Her white colleague, with a lower score, higher debt, and the same salary, was approved 2 days later. She'd always suspected it wasn't about numbers. Now she had the courage to say it. Her post hit 6,000 shares in 2 hours. By day's end, First Haven's CEO was on CNBC fielding questions about redlining, algorithmic bias, and loan discretion. When a reporter asked what triggered the investigation, he sighed. Honestly, that Bradford speech. A Latina mother shared how her family was asked to provide a $250 incidental deposit at check-in, while the white family before her wasn't even asked for ID. Another traveler revealed that her reservation at a boutique hotel had been mysteriously lost after the front desk saw she used a wheelchair. One by one, stories poured in, backed with photos, timestamps, screenshots. Within a week, over 40,000 posts had surfaced across social media platforms using the phrase, "If she hadn't slapped that girl, I never would have spoken up." The world was listening. And they weren't just angry, they were organized. Have you ever carried a story you were too afraid to tell until someone else told theirs first? Comment 1 if you finally shared it. Comment 2 if you're still holding it, but thinking maybe it's time. Back at Skyway's headquarters, Vivian watched the movement grow from her 37th floor office. There were binders on her desk labeled hotel, banking, retail, education. Not because she was pivoting careers, because now everyone wanted her advice. CNN, the White House, the Chamber of Commerce. They all called. How did you change an airline in 72 hours? Can you help us audit our diversity policies? Would you consider chairing a national equity task force? Vivian said yes to some, no to most. She had no interest in becoming a celebrity. But if her daughters could walk through the world with less fear because of the system she helped fix, that was worth every camera. Ava and Lila were adjusting too. They weren't just the girls who got slapped anymore. They were symbols, quietly dignified ones. The kind reporters asked for interviews. The kind students quoted in essays. The kind their principal referenced in morning assembly saying, Two of our own showed the country what courage looks like. But they didn't feel like heroes. Not really. They still remembered every stare in that plane, every voice that stayed silent. Ava still hadn't erased the scratch on her laptop from TSA. Lila still couldn't hear the word reserved at a restaurant without tensing. The trauma was real, but so was the change. They could see it. Their inbox was full of messages from strangers. "I'm a flight attendant. I spoke up today because of you. I was denied a job last year because of my name, but I filed a complaint this morning, and I'm not afraid anymore. My daughter's in a wheelchair. Your story gave me the words I've never had." Sometimes Ava read them out loud. Sometimes they both cried. Sometimes they just held each other and said nothing. And that was okay too. One evening, while walking past the den, Vivian overheard Lila on the phone. "No, I don't think we were brave. We were just tired of being polite." Vivian smiled. That was the truth, wasn't it? It wasn't about bravery. It was about reaching the point where silence cost more than speaking. A week later, Vivian spoke again. This time, not in a press conference, not to shareholders, to students. She stood on a stage at Wellington Prep, looking out at the auditorium filled with teens, some excited, some skeptical, all watching. She didn't lecture. She told them what Ava and Lila had taught her. Change doesn't begin with a headline. It begins with a moment you could let go, but don't. It begins when someone crosses a line and you draw one back. It begins when you're tired of swallowing your voice just to keep the peace. She looked at the crowd. You don't need power to start a revolution. You just need enough pain to stop pretending everything's fine. Silence. Then applause. Then something better than applause. Reflection. The backlash didn't start with a headline. It started with a whisper. A Reddit thread titled, "Are we sure the Bradford girls didn't fake it?" A Twitter post. "We only heard one side." A late-night TV pundit. "Seems like another case of woke parenting gone too far." Then it snowballed. Within 48 hours, hashtags like "had Bradford privilege" and #slaphoax began trending. The same girl who'd been humiliated on a plane was now being accused of manipulating the world. Ava saw the first comment on a classmate's Instagram story. A meme of her face, photoshopped next to a luxury jet, with the caption, "Cry harder, first class Barbie." She didn't say anything. She just shut the app and stared at her screen. Blank. Lila found out in the cafeteria. A kid from the soccer team waved his phone and laughed. "Hey Lila, you want my seat or you gonna sue me?" It wasn't just cruelty. It was dismissal. As if everything they'd endured was now being framed as a performance. Have you ever told the truth and then been punished for it? Comment 1 if that truth cost you something. Comment 2 if you're still afraid to tell it. Back at Skyways HQ, Vivian had already seen the early waves of smear. Articles calling her a tyrannical executive mother. Accusations that she weaponized motherhood for power. One headline even read, "She bought an airline just to prove a point. Now everyone's paying the price." She knew where it came from. Delta's PR firm, United's lobbyists, old guard execs threatened by change they couldn't control. But knowing didn't make it sting less, especially when she walked into her daughter's room and found Ava curled on the bed, headphones in, eyes red. "Sweetheart?" she asked gently. Ava sat up. "I didn't think it'd turn into this. It's not your fault. They think I lied." Vivian sat beside her. "You didn't lie. You lived." Ava didn't respond for a long time, then whispered, "I wish we never boarded that plane." Vivian blinked. Those 8 words cut deeper than any headline ever could. Lila, too, was quieter now. Not because she'd lost confidence, but because she didn't want to be the angry girl. She overheard teachers whispering. She noticed classmates avoiding eye contact. And when one of the boys in her math class said, "Careful what you say, she might get you grounded," she laughed politely, went to the bathroom, and cried for 7 minutes. Vivian was used to storms, hostile takeovers, boardroom betrayals, mergers gone sour, but nothing rattled her like this, watching her daughters question their own dignity. So she made a choice. She wouldn't respond with a press release. She wouldn't sue for defamation. She would speak as what they tried to erase her as a mother. 3 nights later, she sat in front of a webcam, live streaming from her home office. No makeup, no suit, no filters, just Vivian. The caption read, "I'm not a CEO right now, I'm just a mom." Tens of thousands tuned in. They say my daughters lied. They say I used my power to make a point. They're right about one thing. I did use my power, but not to punish anyone, to protect everyone. Because if a child can be slapped in front of witnesses and still be doubted, then every child is at risk of being erased. My daughters didn't cry for attention. They cried because it hurt. And now, people laugh because they're afraid of what that truth says about them. She paused. This story isn't about race or class or wealth. It's about dignity. The kind we're all born with. The kind no airline or internet comment gets to decide. Her voice stayed steady, but her eyes didn't. And that's what broke the internet. By morning, her stream had hit 12 million views. The comments were flooded with, "You're the mom I wish I had. I believed you from the start. Keep going. We need this." Even journalists who'd questioned her motives began to walk it back. One op-ed read, "Maybe the problem isn't how loud she was. Maybe it's how many people chose to stay quiet." At school, things didn't magically fix overnight. But Ava noticed something. Fewer stares, more nods. Someone left a post-it on her locker. "You were brave before it was trending." And Lila, during lunch, saw one of her classmates hand her a folded piece of paper. Inside was a note. "My little sister is autistic. They treat her like she's broken. Thank you for speaking up. You gave me courage." Vivian watched all of it quietly. She didn't call another press conference. She didn't push her daughters to speak again. She just kept the light on, the doors open, and the truth loud enough to survive the silence. Because when you threaten systems built on silence, they scream back. And that scream? It wasn't the end. It was proof that the world was finally listening. The invitation was printed on thick linen paper. No logo, no date, just a time and an address. Vivian Bradford had seen these kinds of meetings before, quiet rooms full of loud money. They didn't send emails. They didn't schedule through assistants. They made a call, then followed up with silence. And that silence was supposed to intimidate her. It didn't. At exactly 6:00 p.m., Vivian stepped out of her black SUV and into the marble lobby of a private high-rise in Midtown Manhattan. Top floor. No press, no record. The receptionist didn't ask for her name. She just nodded once and pressed the elevator button. 30 seconds later, Vivian walked into a room that looked more like a country club than a corporate suite. Mahogany, cognac, leather chairs older than most careers. 5 men were already seated. 2 from Delta, 1 from United, 1 from Southwest, 1 from American. Not a woman in sight. Not a black face in the room. Vivian smiled anyway. "Ms. Bradford," said the man from Delta, standing halfway. "We appreciate you coming." "Of course," Vivian replied. "I'm always interested in conversations about collective progress." There was a beat of silence. Then United's CEO cut in. "Let's not dance around. Your reforms, they're shaking the whole sector." Vivian didn't blink. "Good. That means they're working." Southwest chimed in. "Look, no one's saying equity isn't important, but grounding flights, tying bonuses to complaint data, that's dangerous precedent." American's man nodded. "You're turning customer service into public theater. That's not sustainable." Vivian looked around the table. "You didn't call this meeting to talk. You called it to contain me. Have you ever walked into a room knowing they didn't want your ideas? Just your silence. Comment 1 on if you've been that person. Comment 2 if you've learned to speak anyway." Delta's CEO leaned forward. "Vivian, let's be honest. The media's made you a hero. Great. But when the noise dies down, you're still running an airline. And so are we. If we all start racing to appease every complaint, we won't survive the next quarter. Vivian's voice was calm. You mean, if we start treating people like humans, it might cost you some bonuses? Silence. I'm not chasing applause, she continued. I'm fixing the core business model, the one that quietly assumes some passengers matter more than others. United's CEO chuckled. And in the process, you're making the rest of us look like dinosaurs. Vivian smiled. If the fossil fits. But then, the man from Southwest dropped his voice. We're just trying to keep this industry stable. You keep shaking the table, people might start pulling seats out from under you. It wasn't a threat. It was a warning. Vivian folded her hands. Let me tell you what happens next. You either walk out of this room today and start real reform, or you double down on denial and watch your next viral moment happen without warning. She pulled a folder from her bag, opened it slowly. Inside, a spreadsheet. Filed complaints by airline. 5-year average. Internal settlement costs. Unreported discrimination payouts. Employee turnover by ethnicity. Passenger retention by demographic. The numbers didn't lie, but they made everyone at the table deeply uncomfortable. Now, she said, you've got 2 options. You partner with me. We form a coalition, share best practices, force accountability. You clean house before the public burns it down. Or, she looked at each man in the eye. You keep pretending it's just my airline with this problem. And when your turn comes, when your crew makes the next mistake, you'll have no one to stand with you. Because by then, the public will know exactly who refused to change. No one spoke for a long time. Then Delta's man exhaled. Vivian, we're not used to being told how to run our companies. Vivian stood. Neither were taxi companies, until Uber showed up. She picked up her bag. And let me be clear, if the industry refuses to evolve, I'm not afraid to become its Uber. Then she walked out. Didn't slam the door, didn't look back, just left 5 CEOs sitting in silence, in a room that used to belong to them. 1 month after the slap that shook the skies, Vivian Bradford walked onto a different kind of stage. No terminals, no TV crews shouting for sound bites. Just a sleek, understated ballroom at the National Transportation Hall in D.C., packed wall to wall with industry executives, regulators, airline union reps, and civil rights observers. But the real spotlight wasn't on her. It was on the empty seat next to the podium, and the logo behind her, AR Equity Coalition. A shared future at 30,000 feet. Vivian didn't wear a power suit. She wore gray, understated, quiet, like her tone. I didn't come here today to talk about what went wrong. We've done enough of that. I came here to talk about what comes next. She clicked a remote. The screen behind her lit up. 5 airlines, 3 unions, 2 airport authorities, the founding members of the coalition. Not all the big names, not yet, but enough. We've spent decades investing in engines, wings, and miles. Today, we start investing in people. This coalition will not be performative. It will be measurable, uncomfortable, and necessary. Then she turned to the man seated stage left, Gerald Michaels, CEO of Jetstream, the 3rd largest domestic carrier. A month ago, he told Bloomberg, Vivian Bradford is running a personal PR stunt that's bad for business. Today, he stood up, walked to the mic, and signed the coalition charter. There were murmurs across the room, flash bulbs, audible gasps. Vivian didn't smile. She didn't need to. Have you ever watched someone who once doubted you come around? Not with an apology, but with action? Comment 1 if you've seen it. Comment 2 if you're still waiting for it. Gerald cleared his throat. I'll admit, I thought she was being theatrical. I thought this was about ego. But then I read every complaint ever filed against my airline in the last 5 years. And I realized she wasn't being dramatic. We were being dishonest. He signed, stepped back, shook her hand. No speeches, no hugs. Just consequence meeting clarity. Backstage, Ava and Lila watched it all unfold from behind the velvet curtain. They were taller now, not physically, but in how they stood. Ava whispered, "That's the man who called us spoiled." Lila replied, "He just signed our names into history." Vivian resumed the mic. "This coalition isn't about being woke. It's about being awake. Awake to the biases we've normalized, the silence we've accepted. Air travel is more than metal and fuel. It's who we allow to feel human at 35,000 feet. We don't need slogans, we need structures." Then she unveiled them. Coalition Pillars Passenger Justice Index. Independent annual rating of airline equity scores, published publicly. Crew Conduct Code. A universal code of conduct across coalition airlines, tied to training and promotion. Equity Ombudsman. A neutral figure passengers can appeal to when internal complaints are mishandled. Live Bias Tracker. Anonymous reporting tool with trend heat maps, accessible by regulators. Youth Passenger Bill of Rights. Protection specifically for minors, adopted by all member carriers. The applause was soft but steady, not wild, but real. One by one, others followed. The head of a regional airline signed. The president of the National Flight Attendants Union added her name. Even a representative from the FAA stood to acknowledge a new chapter. Vivian closed the event with just 6 words. Now we fly forward, together, for real. That night, as the ballroom emptied, Vivian stayed behind to take off her shoes and breathe. Ava came over and handed her a bottle of water. Lila asked, "Do you think the others will join?" Vivian smiled faintly. "They will. Not because I asked. Because passengers will demand it." She looked out the window, past the Potomac, into a sky now a little more honest. "Dignity used to be optional," she said. "Now it's required." 6 months later, the same gate number still glowed above the terminal door. Gate 32, Denver to Boston. Vivian stood with Ava and Lila at the boarding line. But this time, no one stared. No one questioned their seat class. No one reached for a radio when they approached. Just one agent at the counter smiling, checking names. "Welcome aboard, Ms. Bradford. Seats 2A and 2B are ready for you." Vivian thanked her, then stepped aside to let her daughters walk ahead. Ava carried her laptop, now with a bright orange case over the scratch. Lila wore the same bracelet she'd had on the day of the slap, now fixed with a new clasp. Same flight, same people, but not the same world. The boarding process was smooth, polite. Passengers took their seats. No random searches, no whispered comments. Vivian let her daughters settle into 2A and 2B while she took 2C across the aisle. Not because she needed to monitor, but because she didn't need to anymore. The lead flight attendant this time was a young South Asian woman named Priya, her smile warm but respectful. "Ms. Bradford," she said, crouching slightly beside their row. "My name is Priya. I'll be your lead today. If there's anything at all, that your daughters need, I'm here." Ava smiled back. "Thank you. We're good." It wasn't forced. It wasn't fragile. It was real. 2 rows behind, a little black girl sat between her parents, her braids bouncing as she twisted to look out the window. She looked unafraid, not hyper-aware, not holding her seat like it might be taken. Just excited, the way flying is supposed to feel when you're 7. Lila turned and gave her a quick wave. The girl waved back, her grin wide and gap-toothed. Have you ever looked at a younger version of yourself and realized, maybe you left the world just a little better than you found it? Comment 1, if that moment ever found you. Comment 2, if you're still waiting for it, but working toward it. The captain came on the intercom. "Good afternoon, folks. We'll be wheels up shortly for our trip to Boston. Should be a smooth ride today. And thank you, as always, for choosing Skyways. Vivian smiled faintly at the ceiling. Thank you for choosing. 6 months ago, they hadn't been given a choice. 6 months ago, dignity was something they had to fight to prove. Today, it came standard with the boarding pass. As the plane began taxiing, Ava opened her notebook and began scribbling something. Lila peeked. What is that? A poem, Ava said. You write poems now? Ava shrugged. I don't know, maybe. It just came out. In the quiet hum of takeoff, Vivian leaned her head back and let her mind drift. She thought of all the things that had changed. The airline, the boardroom, the industry. But most of all, she thought of her daughters. How they'd once been just 2 girls on a plane, quiet, respectful, invisible. And how now they were a part of something bigger. Not activists, not mascots. Just people who refused to stay quiet when silence hurt more than speaking. When the seatbelt sign turned off, a passenger from economy approached hesitantly. A black woman in her 50s, wearing a simple blue cardigan and holding a paperback. Ms. Bradford, she whispered. I just wanted to say thank you. Vivian smiled. I didn't do this alone. I know, but someone had to start it. She looked at Ava and Lila. And someone had to be brave enough to finish it. The rest of the flight passed like any other. No drama, no incident, no headlines. Just a mother sipping tea, 2 sisters sharing earbuds, and a cabin full of strangers who, for the first time in a long time, were being treated like they all belonged. As they descended into Boston, Ava looked out the window, quiet. What are you thinking? Vivian asked. Ava didn't turn away from the clouds. I'm thinking maybe what happened to us didn't break us. Maybe it opened a door for everyone else. Vivian reached across the aisle and held her hand. No reply needed. Some truths didn't need to be spoken anymore. They were already flying. The wheels lifted off the Denver runway at exactly 8:06 a.m. No detours, no delays. Just the steady hum of engines. The quiet shuffle of flight attendants preparing service. Ava looked out the window as clouds gathered below them like soft mountains. She didn't tense when a flight attendant approached. She didn't glance at her ID or her seat assignment or her bag like she used to. She just sat and belonged. In the row behind her, the little girl with braids had begun drawing. She glanced forward at Ava now and then, wide-eyed with silent admiration. Vivian noticed. She leaned toward Lila and whispered, Do you see that? Lila nodded. She's not afraid like we were. Vivian smiled softly. That's how change starts looking normal. Later, when snack service began, Priya, the flight attendant, returned with a quiet gesture. She crouched beside their row, held out a folded napkin. Inside it were 2 handwritten notes, one for each girl. Ava's read, You're the reason my niece still wants to become a pilot. Lila's read, Because of you, I stayed in this job. You gave me hope it can be better. They read in silence. They didn't cry, not this time. Instead, Lila folded hers carefully and placed it in the back of her phone case. I want to see it when I forget what this meant. Vivian reached across and gently squeezed her hand, not to comfort, but to anchor the moment. An hour before landing, a flight announcement came through. Ladies and gentlemen, this flight marks a milestone. Skyways has now completed 6 months of 0 verified discrimination complaints, thanks to our coalition-backed system. We're proud of the changes and proud to serve with dignity, without exception. Applause broke out in the cabin. A ripple of claps, a few smiles. One woman wiped her eyes and whispered, Finally. Behind them, the little girl with braids had now finished her drawing. She turned in her seat and tapped Ava's elbow. This is you, she said, beaming. She held up a crayon sketch. A girl with big hair, a crown, and an airplane behind her. Ava looked stunned. Is that my cape? The girl giggled. Yeah, you're the hero. Vivian caught it all. And in that moment, she didn't need a press conference, a charter, or a board vote. That moment was policy enough. Boston Logan Airport looked the same. Busy, tired, focused. But for Ava and Lila, it looked different. Not because the building had changed, but because they had. As they walked through the terminal, luggage in hand, Vivian hung back and let them lead. 6 months ago, they'd followed her with heads down. Today, they walked like they belonged in every space they entered. At baggage claim, a man in a business suit recognized them. He didn't ask for a photo. He simply said, "Thanks for what you did," and walked on. That was the new fame. Not noisy, just respectful. Outside, a car waited. The driver, a middle-aged man with graying hair, held the door and said softly, "My daughter's in 6th grade. They studied your story last week." Vivian paused. "They did?" "Yeah." The teacher said it was a case study in ethics. She wrote an essay titled, "Courage Isn't Loud." Vivian blinked. "That's a better title than we ever came up with." That night, back at their hotel, the girls ordered room service and curled up to watch a movie. Vivian stepped out to the balcony. Boston's skyline glittered across the bay, alive with light. She pulled out her phone, not to check email, but to open her notes app. Typed 3 sentences. Systems change, but slowly, until one day a child boards a plane, and nothing about her feels political. She's just flying. She hit save. In the other room, Ava looked at Lila. "Do you think we're still the same people?" Lila didn't answer right away. Then softly, "Same heart, bigger voices." A beat of silence. Same kindness, better armor. The next morning, they checked out and headed back to the airport for the return flight. Same gate, same airline, different world. As they waited in line, a white man in his 60s turned and said, "You're those girls, aren't you?" They both hesitated. Then Ava nodded. The man didn't smirk. He didn't frown. He said, "You didn't just get slapped. You slapped the whole damn system awake." Then he tipped his cap and walked away. If you've ever thought your voice was too small to matter, comment 1. If today reminded you it's not, comment 2. They boarded quietly, took their seats. This time, no napkins with messages, no strangers approaching, just peaceful flight, just ordinary. And that was the most beautiful part, because now being treated fairly didn't feel like a victory. It felt like normal. The plane took off. They didn't cheer. They just looked forward, the way change should feel.